Hello. This is the contest, Fantasy Footy Show, where I haven't got the script in front of me, write the run sheet 2 minutes before recording. We are just, as you can tell, not super put together today. I am Jesse. I'm with K-Man. He's a dual hat winner. I make the rankings. We're your hosts. We like fantasy footy. You can follow me on Twitter at Contest Fantasy, and you can follow K-Man on Twitter at K-Man_TC Fantasy. Mate, how you doing today?
We are back at work. Holidays are over. That's why we have we're not as on the ball for this one. But I saw you a lot today. It was good. I never normally
we were
see
up and around it
that much in a day's work. So it's cool to catch up and talk normal life stuff, which then turned into fantasy.
Yeah, well, we live at opposite ends of the school, don't we? You're down the cool end with the footballs and the soccer balls and the cricket bats and all of that manner of stuff, and I'm up the dorky end with the textbooks and the glass walls. It's a world between us.
I did surprise you today with a bit of karaoke, so that was fun.
You did surprise me with karaoke. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to tell this story. So I'm walking into my prep room and I see my co-host coming towards me, and he's looking really serious. You're looking down at your phone. I think you were just trying not to laugh. Yeah. Now that I know, George Costanza. And I look at him, and I'm sort of waiting, and I'm like, "Are you coming in here?" I'm like, "Oh, mate, are you coming in here?" And you just kind of go, "Yep, mm-hmm." And then you come in, and then all of a sudden, he's got a camera in my face and a microphone in front of the camera, and he's like, "Apple bottom jeans." And I had to process this. I was like, boots with the fur?
Yeah, good responses. I went around and saw a number of staff and just wanted to start a bit of fun Friday, a bit of fun karaoke that I release every Friday. And you were our first cab off the rank. Appreciate it.
Can't wait to see the video. How many did you get? How many staff did you get?
I reckon I got about 8 to 10 in the end, of varying degrees of engagement.
That is, okay. I can imagine that there are a few less than impressed colleagues in there. Oh, that's classic. Starting to show off a little bit at work, man. I love it.
That's it.
Look, we've got a bit of news, everybody. You may or may not be aware. We have launched finally a YouTube channel. We've gone video. We've come into the 21st century, and it would be awesome if you could. I hate being this person. I don't like being this person, but please go subscribe, like, share the videos, share the content, help us out, check it out. If you really like the pod, but you're like, you know what? I like watching podcasts. I like having them on the telly while I cook dinner. I like doing all of, I don't know, watching them while you're clipping your toenails or something. Doesn't bother me how you watch the pod, but go check us out on YouTube. There'll also be a link down below in the description on both Spotify and Apple as well. Now, I have a bit of news for you, mate.
Yeah,
and for everyone else. I meant to bring this up on the last pod, and I got distracted. But I gained a follower on Twitter.
Wow, congratulations!
And, okay, thank you. Just bringing
I'm sure there's more to it. I'm sure there's more to it.
Yeah, I now have one follower. No, look, I'm not particularly prolific on Twitter or anything like that, and I've gained my fair share of fantasy community followers, but the big dog himself, Warnie, has followed me on Twitter. Warnie of the Traders. The Warn Dog has followed me on Twitter. And it was very exciting. Yeah, I got that one notification, new follow, the Warn Dog. So
Traders, Warn Dog, love to have you on the show.
Love to have you on the show, Warnie. Anytime, mate. It would be our pleasure to host you. Come on down. With that, can you imagine this? Yeah. Can you imagine the pressure he's been under with the release of this app? I mean, yay, we finally got it. But can you imagine back end how much commentary he's had about when's this thing opening? When's it opening? Well done, Warnie. I'm sure he's had to put up with a lot of internet commentary about this. So love to have you on the show, Warnie. Love all that you do. Love the support you have for fantasy footy, mate. Over to our end of things, though, we've got a cool show lined up. We've got our next redraft episode. We've got a guest lined up for our redraft episode next week as well. We'll reveal who that is on the Tuesday show for Classic. But we're doing some more rankings today. It seems to be forward week. It's a bit of a theme at the moment. We talked about forwards and the forward line and different strategies. There's some awesome stuff that K-Man talked about in that episode, and stuff about value and what does value look like in the forward line this year in Classic, and how, it's kind of changing the game, or the game looks a bit different this year. So go check that out for all those Classic fans. But today we're talking about the top 50 forward rankings in draft, all tiered. We will talk in depth about probably the top 25 or so, and then we'll just rattle off some names after that as well. We're going to take you through every name that's listed. We're going to take you through the tiers, and we have done an update on these, so you can see these updated tiers probably by tomorrow on the website. They will get out to you. But should we just get stuck into it, kick it off?
Yeah, I'm excited about this. You had a really good strategy episode, that the 20-minute short. So now seeing it in practice, I think is going to be really good.
Yeah, no, this will be really, really good. Look, it is, we'll get straight into it. It is absolutely no secret that the forward line is a schmozzle this year.
Starved.
And if starved, exactly. If you haven't listened to that strategy pod, the mini that K-Man's talking about, we didn't actually link it on Twitter because we had a bit of an overlap. But there's a 25-minute episode where we talk about the best strategies that you can use this year in redraft, in fantasy footy, in on Keeper or whatever platform that you're drafting on. Talks about the hero forward, the zero forward, the early round mids, the mid round rucks, all these different things that you can apply on draft night. But those zero and I guess a quick recap of the zero and hero forward strategy is this idea that you either take an absolute top end guy or no one at all in the first 2 rounds. And you just load up on midfielders, defenders, maybe an elite ruck. And then once you hit about round 8 or 9, you just start going ham on forwards. You just pick up forward after forward after forward at that point. You load up on them, maybe 4 or 5 forwards in a row, probably depending on the depth of your league, and just hope that one hits, aiming for upside. So that is a great strategy, we think, this year, just simply because there are so few options. If you're employing that hero forward strategy, these are the 2 names that I am going to recommend. Now, one of them will work. Only one of them will actually be relevant in AFL fantasy. But if you're drafting on Keeper, then both these names will be good. Our tier 1 forwards are called, well, I've actually called it the only forward worth a first round pick, and that is Harry Sheezel. I think Harry Sheezel is probably the consensus number 1 overall pick for most people this year. Would you say, you asked me and I said, yeah, I'd probably take him first overall if I had that pick. Are you the same? Do you feel like you just look at that positional opportunity and you go, that's such an advantage, I'm going to take Harry Sheezel if you have pick 1?
Yeah, if I have one, it's Harry Sheezel or maybe a ruck. That's where I'm probably going at this stage, just with the ruck rules. Maybe some upside with transitional rucks. But Harry Sheezel, I don't think we can deny the gap between ceiling, consistency of floor compared to the remaining forwards. So first round pick, absolutely.
The second name is relevant if you're drafting in Keeper, and that's Isaac Heaney. Now, Isaac Heaney has mid-only status in AFL fantasy, but in Keeper, he's got mid-forward status. I would put Isaac Heaney in this tier 1 alongside Harry Sheezel. I feel like Harry Sheezel probably has a more consistent floor, but I think they have equally large ceilings. And I feel like depending on fixture, Isaac Heaney probably has more chance to hit his ceiling more often than Harry Sheezel does. I feel like Harry Sheezel probably sits more comfortably in that 100 to 110 range. But I almost feel like when I watch Isaac Heaney, I would expect to see maybe 3 or 4 120 to 130 games out of him, where maybe I'd only expect to see 1 or 2 from Harry Sheezel as well. Do you feel the same? Do you feel like if you're sitting at pick 8 or 9 and Isaac Heaney drops to you in the first round, are you happy to take him as a hero forward in that spot?
I guess for me personally, it's a bit of an unknown quantity in terms of what his CBA percentage is going to be. Where do you think he fits with CBA time? Do you think it's a 65 to 70 split with Goulden coming back? I know Goulden plays a bit more outside, but the disappointing year that they had, are they going to regress to Heaney spending more time up forward to complement a Charlie Curnow? Or do we see Curnow now actually adding midfield minutes to Isaac Heaney? And I think that's the question, is what that CBA percentage is going to be. What are your thoughts? Do you think he is a central figure now in that midfield, or do we still see elements of Heaney going forward, maybe kicking some goals? Is that an issue? Because we know that when he does, he's very impactful.
I think he's too good not to have in that CBA mix. I'm just getting his profile up on DFS. The interesting thing is this. In 2024, he went 74% CBAs on average, and in 2025, he went 75% on average. So whether Errol Goulden was in or not in the side, he was kind of, his CBA attendances were fairly consistent, and I sort of don't see a reason as to why that would change. You make a good point of like, I think maybe one of the things they're missing up forward is impact in the forward line. Like, there's probably an argument that he's so dangerous around the goals that you want to maximize the opportunity he's got in front of them. I mean, they had Jesse Detoli come in last year as a rookie who looks, I think he could be a really, really great player, but he's not going to make an impact in his second year. He barely played last year, so you kind of can't put that on him. So you make a good point, but I think unless we see something really significant in the preseason that suggests it is going to go that way, for me, I think I just play the chances of, I'm a betting man, I guess, in this sense. And he's had 75% CBAs the last 2 years, with or without Errol. I'd be willing to bet that happens again. And even if it regresses to say 68 to 70%, I'd still probably be relatively comfortable with that if it meant that I could secure him as an F1, because I could trade him away later for a pretty good haul, I feel like.
It's a pretty impressive attacking weapon, isn't it? Having Charlie Kerner to take, the premier defender out of contention. Then you have Isaac Heaney, who's really surprising with his one-on-one contest work and his ability to take contest marks in that attacking 50. So whether that adds to his scoring potential is another factor to consider. Absolutely. Is there a reason why he is forward in keeper and not in draft? AFL fantasy?
I look, I'm not 100% sure on this. I believe keeper fantasy has a lower threshold for requirement of forward time than AFL fantasy does. And there are a couple of times where a player does have this status, or this one, or this one, but not that one, across the two different platforms. And AFL fantasy is now introducing TPP this year, but like keeper have had TPP forever. We just choose in our league not to activate that as an option, but that could have something to do with it as well. It's like maybe those calculations are a little bit different. Moving on to tier 2, and I think there's debatably one name in this tier that maybe could be in tier 1. So I'd be interested to get your thoughts on that. Now, I reckon you probably have a different order than me of these names. I've ranked the next two. So tier 2 is, I've just called solid F1. Like if you come out of the draft, you're not necessarily employing a zero forward strategy. If you have one of these guys as your F1, you're probably pretty happy. So that's at 2, I've got Sam Flanders. At 3, I've got Christian Petrarca. And at 4, I've got Brian Myers. I'm fairly confident that you, to some extent, disagree with these rankings here. So I'm going to ask you about that first. How do you feel about Sam Flanders sitting there at F2 overall?
Oh, it's not so much about Sam Flanders. It's St Kilda's system. I've talked about it in previous pods where they can just have those outlier games where they're not the contested possession beasts that Ross Lyon has tried to instill from week to week. And they just have games where their contested work gets smashed. That's my issue. And whether they're going to change game style this year, Ross Lyon, I just have a few question marks for a solid number 2, whereas I think a Petrarca and a Myers will have the consistency over Flanders purely based on system.
So if I pull up Jack McRae's page on DFS from last year, so he averaged 90 fantasy points last year, right? And that's in that St Kilda system. He did drop off at the back end. He got off to a really, really hot start. Obviously, Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller at the end averaged like 109 or 107 fantasy points, playing midfield time as well. Jack Sinclair averages about 100. Jack Steele averaged 95 last year. So we've got all these guys in that St Kilda system that do average fairly strongly. I know Sam Flanders' average coming off of last year at 68 is sort of fairly scary, but I suppose my logic with this ranking was that If we look back to 2024 with the Gold Coast Suns, can you remember what he averaged off the top of your head? I've got it in front of me, so I will tell you.
2024. Oh, yeah. Is that the gun season?
This is the gun season where he was playing off halfback.
Was that 104, 105?
107.8. So 108 he essentially averaged. Like, he was absolutely elite. His CBAs were
thirsty
only...
back there.
Can you guess what his center bounce attendances were?
In 2024?
Yeah. In that elite year?
Predominantly halfback, 40%?
31%.
Yeah.
Only 31% CBAs. He averaged in 2023 89.6 as well. So I guess here's my logic with Sam Flanders at F2. I reckon he can. I think his floor is going to be 90. That's my gut feel. I think he can be a 90 guy with some space to grow as well. So that's kind of my feeling, because then I look at track and I go, I think he'll be a 90 guy. And I look at Brian Myers and I think he'll be a 90 to 95 guy with some probably a lower floor than the other two. The next name, though, like you just talked about, so Christian Petrarca we've got at number 3 here. You feel like you'd put him above that. And I get that, because even though I kind of have Sam Flanders ranked above him, I think there's probably an argument to be made that Christian Petrarca could be counted in that tier 1. What do you reckon of that idea? I kind of feel like a lot of people see this maybe as an opportunity for him to score 100 again, to be a 100 averaging guy. And I would suggest that in the forward line, if you average 100 this year, you're a tier 1 guy. Yeah. Would you feel comfortable taking track in round 2 and taking him over a midfielder that you might otherwise be able to get in round 2?
You've just said the word midfielder. If I was in round 2 and I had the opportunity to pick a midfielder that was going to be up around the 100 mark, I think I'd take that every time. And that was going to be my question for you. So our 20-minute pod last time, you talked about that hero pick, and then we save your picks for later on. At what line do you see these players being in that hero? Is it purely Sheasel and Heaney, or would you see a Petrarca in around 2, a Brian Myers in around 2, or would you suggest that in comparison to a midfielder that you could get around the same pick might have a higher floor, higher ceiling, that you would go down that path?
I think it's dependent on how aggressive you want to be. So for me personally, I'm comfortable this year if, like, let's say I have pick 110 or 111. I don't think that in AFL Fantasy, Harry Sheasel will not be there at 110. And in keeper, I doubt Isaac Heaney will be there either, depending on the league you're in. If I can't get either of those two guys, then I'm not taking a forward, probably for at least 4 rounds, but possibly more. I think I'm just totally punting the position, because if I ignore forwards at that point, then I can load up on guys like, I can take Bailey Smith or Errol Goulden in round 1. I can take Josh Dunkley or Jai Caldwell probably in round 2. And then in round 3, I can still take Finn Callahan, maybe Sam Walsh, maybe Tim Taranto or Hugh McCluggage if I'm really lucky, or something like that. And then, the other way you could go is you could go, okay, well, instead of one of those midfielders, I'll take 3 of them. And then the other pick, I'll take maybe Max Gawn at the back end of round 1. So I would much rather load up on those players than take, a 90 guy when I can get like 405 guys or something like that. So that's kind of my thinking. Having said that, I think there's an argument to be made that if you're a little bit more risk averse than I am, you could take any one of Sheasel, Heaney, Flanders, Petrarca. I think it gets a little bit murky when you get down to like Brian Myers, Isaac Rankin, Treloar, and Manor. I wouldn't be taking anyone after Manor in the first 2 or 3 rounds, though.
I got a question for you. Do you forecast that because of this crop of forwards, there's going to be an early forward run? Do you think people are going to panic and want to pick up a Flanders, Petrarca, Myers?
It's so hard to tell. I think it depends on the league. I think the really switched on leagues, the leagues where people listen to lots of fantasy content, the leagues that maybe have some absolute degenerate fantasy players like us in it, the leagues that really are full of pretty serious fantasy players. No, I don't. I think those leagues will see Sheasel, Heaney, Flanders, and Petrarca go in the first 2 to 3 rounds. And then after that, I think it's going to dry up a fair bit. I think in most leagues, though, in casual leagues, yeah, I do. I think you're going to see Isaac Rankin and Adam Treloar go pretty early. I think there are going to be a lot of people who don't realize that Adam Treloar has forward status, and they go, "Oh my god, I can get Adam Treloar in my forward line," and they're going to pick him. So I think there will be forward runs relatively early in more casual leagues, and in that strategy episode, we talk exactly about what to do with which positional runs as well. So go and have a listen to that one as well if you want to find out how you should attack positional runs when they pop up.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, this has just hit me. You talked about Adam Treloar.
Keep going. Hit me with it.
You love it. You love
Smack
it.
me over the face with it. Yeah,
you talk about Adam Treloar due to the name, due to the history, the pedigree. Is he someone you could see going early? Purely based on Adam Treloar, the player, because he's in the forward line. Could someone go aggressive on him?
I could. Again, I probably see it. Yeah. Interestingly, the more I'm thinking about it now, actually, I feel like maybe that's more likely to happen in switched on leagues, actually. Like if there is someone who is just really hot on Adam Treloar and they go, you know what, 2 years ago, Adam Treloar averaged 110 or was the highest scoring player in fantasy football. He had a year of injury off. I'm going to take the risk here. And I don't see him going in round 1, but I could totally see someone going, you know what, I can get Harry Sheasel caliber forward for the price of a late second round pick. I could see a more switched on person doing that. Yeah. But I don't think it's going to be very common. I think that's a really risky move to potentially gamble away a top 20 pick. Can't wait to see you do that on draft day, mate. So tier 3. So this tier I've just called the safe floor tier. So these are the guys where you're comfortable taking them. You're pretty happy, I think, if they're your F2 or lower. But I think if you panic and you see a positional run coming, or you see those first names dry up and you panic and you go, oh, I better take a forward. I think if these guys end up as your F1, then you've probably had to take them too early and you've probably had to sacrifice some value on the board. So this is a bit of a longer tier, so bear with me. At F5, I've got Isaac Rankin. F6, I've got Adam Treloar. F7, I've got Sean Manor. F8, I've got Cozzy Pickett, followed by Sam Darcy at 9, Dylan Moore at 10, Riley Thilthorpe at 11, Zach Bailey at 12. I've got Sam Draper coming in at 13. It's worth noting he's currently listed as IR on our rankings. I'm just leaving that there to hedge my bets a little bit. As soon as we get complete confirmation that he's playing round 1, I will remove that. At F14, we've got Mateus Philippou. We've got not poo on the stands. We've got poo on the field.
Poo on the spreadsheet.
Poo on the spreadsheet. We've got Jack Graham at F15, Jai Simpkin at 16, Jeremy Cameron at 17, Toby Green at 18, C-Mac, Connor McDonald at 19, Justin McInerney at 20. And to round out the safe floor tier, we've got Harry Mackay at F21. First thing I'll just say before I pass over to you for some thoughts, mate, is that one of the big reasons I say you can really wait on this tier is the whole point of tiers is they're like buckets of players. You know, most of the players in this tier, like, you know, Isaac Rankin will average more than Harry Mackay at season's end, but it may not be by an absolute ton. All of these guys will be roughly around the same average by season's end, I would imagine. So because this is such a long tier, you can kind of wait to take these guys and go, I'll take someone at the back end of it rather than someone at the front end. So Isaac Rankin, really quickly, we don't have to say a ton about him, but at F5, I know you're historically not big on Isaac Rankin in the way he racks up possessions, but assuming he plays a reasonable amount of midfield when he returns from suspension, we know that Adelaide need some more impact through their midfield. How do you feel about, if we're not talking salary cap, but we're talking redraft, how do you feel about Isaac Rankin as an F2 option? Or if you've I guess even as an F1 option if you decide to go early on a forward.
Yeah, a value pick in a classic last year with that news that he may play midfield minutes, and he started the season that way, didn't he? And I was really surprised by his contested numbers. It really threw me to come out and see that he was perhaps the best contested player in that midfield. And then Nick's decided to change that setup slightly. He played more forward time. So it really comes down to that split, because he's not going to kick 5 to 8 goals a game. He might get you 2 to 3 if he's in that forward pocket stretch. He probably does more assists. So it really comes down to, is he going to secure that midfield time? Dan Curtin injury could help. I was concerned earlier when Keys was injured, and they're playing around with Rochelle. They've got Saligo. But I think if Dan Curtin is injured again, they're going to have to, and for a period of time, that, let's face it, it's going to be months. It all comes down to whether Isaac Ragnan's going to be that dynamic thread in that midfield. And if he is, then yes, he's certainly someone who, as a fantasy player, can score quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't see myself having any shares of Isaac Rankin in redraft this year. I think he's in an awkward spot where when you look at the forward rankings, he probably is around the 4th to 7th best forward in most rankings. And so in order to have him on your team, you've just got to take him a bit early. And I think because of the quality of forwards versus the quality of other players, I think unless you're really bullish on Isaac Rankin, maybe bumping that average up from 87 from last year to, say, 95 plus, I think unless he can get to that like 95, then you it's probably not worth taking him. Because I think even if he averages 90, I think it's going to be a really rough journey getting to that season-long average, and you're going to have to experience a fair few sort of low floor games. Next guy I want to talk about is Sam Darcy. You've put a mark next to his name. He's coming off a season average of 82. You were an owner in Classic, and that was a bit of a journey for you. So tell me about Sam Darcy, mate. Do you agree with this ranking of F9? Do you feel like he's too low, too high, or about right?
I'm torn. I'm torn for a couple of reasons. I did have Sam Darcy, and the ceiling was fantastic. His ability to take marks uncontested due to his height was that undeniable characteristic, which was why we picked him. He's also chopping out in the ruck, and I guess my question is, with the new ruck rules, I know he's against Rory Lobb to help out with Tim English, but he's got another pre-season under his belt, perhaps working his ruck craft. Is he going to get more ruck time, especially with quick ball up in the forward? And my question is now, having such an outstanding period in the forward line, a defensive structure is now going to target Darcy, whether it's through double team matchups or something like that. Or, as Kane Corn says, is this now the best player in the competition? Is he going to be the best player in the competition for 2026? Ruck more, have more ability in front of 50, in front of goals in the attacking 50. So could he actually go to another level? That's what I'm grappling with. So I think he's in the right spot. I actually think he's going to have a better season than he did last year. Yeah.
If I had to put you on the spot for a projection, like he averaged 82 last year, and that was with a really good run through the middle once he came back, couple of down games, and from memory he finished relatively strong. What would you project he average? If you think he's going to do better, what would you project he averages this year?
Well, if he gets more ruck contribution, I think he could push 85 to 87 mark. I really think he can. And having that ability to take those marks in forward 50, kick more goals with quicker entries, hopefully through the Bulldogs, and again, quick transition. Imagine him one-on-one, and they're going to do that. I think it just became too predictable towards the end of the year. Yeah. So whether structurally they set him up differently or they set their forward line up differently so Sam Darcy's more isolated, if they practice that and he gets more ruck time, I really do think he could hit that 85 to 87 mark.
I think that's the key as well, though, isn't it? Like, they're going to have to get a little bit more creative with his usage. You know, it's kind of like Sydney with Buddy Franklin, where it was like, just kick to Buddy Franklin, just find Buddy Franklin and we'll be right. And I feel like the Dogs probably don't want to become that team where their entire system becomes when we enter forward 50, we just look for Sam Darcy.
Bomb it to Darcy.
Bomb it to Darcy. I think that'll be a real problem. They did.
Yep.
Yeah. And in the back end of the season, I'm just looking at his page now, like his last 3 scores was 71, 60, and 50 in rounds 22, 23, 24. He still scored, he went goalless in round 24. He still got 3 and 2 in the previous 2 rounds, but far less possessions than he'd been racking up in the previous games, which tells me that he just wasn't getting his hands on the pill as much.
Well, that's what it was. Because it was predictable, there was suddenly a 3rd man up, 4th man up. Yep. He was in pack marks because they knew where it was going.
So the next interesting name is the very next one in the rankings. That's F10, Dylan Moore, who I feel like could have a bit of a resurgent season. And you make a really good point on the spreadsheet here. You've noted that Will Day is out, which is terrible news, obviously. I didn't mean to sound excited when I said that. Really
you did.
It's not exciting. It's not exciting. Will Day is a beautiful athlete to watch when he's on. So
that's it.
It's really sad. It sucks. But with Will Day out, that's a massive hole in the midfield to be filled. And Dylan Moore is probably one of a number of players on that team who could potentially, I feel like not a single player will fill that void, but maybe a number of players will come together to play their role and run through the midfield. And so Dylan Moore's coming off an 81. He kind of got it together in the back end of the season, but it was a bit of a struggle with Dylan Moore for most of the season. He's got a rounds 1 to 5 DVP of a C. So it's a relatively neutral opening 5 rounds for him. Would you feel comfortable taking Dylan Moore at his projected ranking here? Like if he's at F10, then theoretically he could go in the first 5 rounds. Would you feel comfortable with that?
I don't know if I can feel comfortable. Dylan Moore seems to be a run player where he'll have patches of these scores, but then he could easily drop a 60, 70. And he seems to be a bit of a Mr. Fix-It as well in a system where he'll play wing, he'll come out and help at the back, then all of a sudden he's forward, he loses his midfield minutes. But you're right, day out, they lose a distributor. They've lost Warple, so they've lost some defensive structure as well. With the young kids of Ward, McKenzie, Newcomb's been announced co-captain today, so I think they're going to need someone with a bit more distribution prowess. Dylan Moore fits that bill, but he just doesn't seem to be a player who sustains midfield time. And that's the concern, is he could easily play a full half a footy in the forward line or on the wing, and you lose that capacity from week to week.
I was stoked in 2024 when I picked up Dylan Moore fairly late in our redraft. And he ended up averaging 91. I think he was my F1 or 2 that year, and it ended up being a really, really great pick. I just don't, I'm with you. I don't have the same amount of confidence that I once did in his consistent role within the team. I mean, I'm looking at his DFS here, and tell you what, if you owned him in any capacity last year, it was rough. He didn't hit his first ton until round 13 at a 106. He followed it up with that 122, and we thought, hey, we need to start looking at Dylan Moore. I remember us talking about him, and then he went 74, 71, 70. And then he went 143, 99, 62, 91, 123. Patches. Didn't score another ton until the finals. So patches, exactly.
Have you got the other years there? He always seems to be a player who starts very slow.
So he averaged in 2023, 88, and in 2022, 93 overall. And if I scroll down, 2023, look, he had patches again. So back end of 2023, he had 103, 107, 82, 127. But before that, he had 6 scores. Well, 5 scores below 80, and one of them was 84. So, and then again, a couple of good scores and then patches. So it's really just 2024 was kind of his slightly more consistent year. So
and those ceilings inflate that average just due to the nature of the high ceiling, but the floor.
Absolutely. I mean, when you remove, a 150 or a 143 from someone's average and the rest of their scores are 60s, 70s and a low ton, that's going to hurt. We've got another player we're going to talk about with the Hawks soon in regards to filling that Will Day kind of void. But before we get there, I just want to touch on 2 really quickly. So at F12, we've got Zach Bailey. So after Dylan Moore came Riley Thilthorpe, and then at F12, we've got Zach Bailey. And then at F14, we've got Mateus Philippou. So Zach Bailey's coming off like a bit of a career year at 83. He's a guy that I generally like, and I think Roy on the Traders says this a lot. Always love picking up Zach Bailey in the later rounds, rounding out your forward line, your F3, F4 with Zach Bailey. You're not going to get him as an F3 or an F4 this year. You'll have to pick him up as an F2, I think. I'm not sure I'm there for paying that price for Zach Bailey at an F2 because I feel like with him, like I was listening to DR Supercoach on MJ's Top 50 this morning, and they were talking about Hugh McCluggage, and DR's a big fan of the Brisbane Lions as well, and they were talking about the Lions midfield makeup. And I agreed with his points that Hugh McCluggage was probably going to take a step forward. They might manage Lachie Neale's minutes, but he will still be a key cog in that midfield. We've got Will Ashcroft. We've got Levi Ashcroft as well. Dan Annibal's going to come. We've got this plethora of midfielders. I just don't see a world. I kind of feel like Zach Bailey might regress here. And the more I'm thinking about it, I actually sort of want to drop him from F12 to something like maybe F16. How do you feel?
Well, let's think of this as a Lions fan. Would you prefer Zach Bailey in the midfield with, I don't know, 24 possessions, or do you want Zach Bailey with 15 possessions and kicking 3 goals? What do you think is going to have the most? 100%.
Yeah.
I still think he's the guy we want kicking 3 goals a game as that sneaky small forward.
100%. And the thing is, like, he ran through the midfield. He those midfield minutes did go up in the latter half of the season, but he did his best work in front of goals, arguably, and not so much in the grand final. But he did his best work there.
He still kicked a couple of crackers.
He put him away.
I tell you what, I was fortunate enough. Well, there's 2 sides of the story. I was fortunate enough to be at the MCG for the Collingwood grand final, and Zach Bailey's goal was right in front of us, and it just
amazing.
The place erupted. That was unbelievable footwork, what he did in that short space right on the boundary line. And that's what you want.
I remember that one. Wow.
In front of goal. We obviously lost the game by 4 points, but that's the Zach Bailey we love. It's the one who can snag a goal from the most impossible position in forward pocket and has that sneaky goal thirst that the Lions need. So I agree with you. I think it's going to be more of that forward split. And
he's kind of like
people in that midfield.
He's kind of like our Isaac Heaney in a way, but the difference is Sydney need Isaac Heaney in the midfield, but we don't need Zach Bailey in the midfield. Like, I think in an ideal setup, you probably just keep Isaac Heaney at half forward and have him roll through the midfield on occasion. The problem, they don't have the depth to do that, but we have the depth to do that. And so I just, even last year, Zach Bailey's CBAs were not their highest. Like, they were only 10%. And in other years, he's been in there for 13%, 23%, 21, 27. So they actually went down. I think maybe he just had a really, really good year. And I'm not convinced that he can totally replicate it, at least from a fantasy perspective. I'm sure he'll have a great real life year. The Pooh, real quick, You mentioned that you read some trading notes about him. So you're coming around on this one.
Well, I actually wanted to put it to you because I reckon 12 months ago we were all hot on Pooh, and then obviously the injury.
It'll never not be funny. That's
I know.
Shocking.
Obviously, it didn't happen, and even before we started recording the pods, you still saw similar value. You've cooled a little, and the notes that we heard today was a lot of midfield time and looking good. Looking fit. Is that something that changes your mind with a Philippou, not just for Classic, but also for draft?
Yeah. And I mean, it's not that I've cooled on him. It's like, I when we did our way too early Classic team reveals, like, we didn't really know what a lot of the value options were. And I looked at him and I went, well, he could have some midfield time, so that could be interesting. I've cooled on him slightly in the sense that the more time I've thought about it, the more I've gone, well, there's a fair few midfielder options on that team. Is he really going to be a top 3 banana in that midfield? And I was questioning that. But I was like, if we get some good trading notes, like if we see that he's in that midfield mix, yeah, I'll launch into him in Classic. And I think he could be a really cheeky value option. Because the thing is, I've got him ranked at F14. I'm not convinced that he will be drafted at F14. I feel like this is a player who could be drafted around the F25 range. So
okay,
just because he's had a year off.
I was going to have two questions. What do you think he averages this year? And where do you think he would go as a draft pick? Is he someone that you would go aggressive on?
I think he can probably, I think if he has a really solid midfield role, I think he can probably average 85 would be my guess. I know we saw some elite numbers from him at the back end of 2024. I'm not convinced that that is something he can replicate sustainably because we haven't seen enough of him yet. And I think it'd be kind of dishonest for me to be like, oh, he can be a 105 guy. But I'd feel comfortable with a projection of 85 if he's got the role. What was your second question?
Where would he go?
In a draft? Yeah. I think he will go late. Unless we see just like outstanding training notes every week for weeks on end and he starts getting talked about on all the podcasts, I think he won't go very early. I think you can probably pick him up in round 5, 6, 7. And if you're doing a hero forward or a zero forward strategy, you can probably start taking him around round 6, 7. And I think that's okay. C-Mac, Connor McDonald.
Your boy C-Mac!
My boy C-Mac. As a reminder, after Mateus Philippou, we had Jack Graham at 15, Jai Simpkin, Jeremy Cameron, Toby Green at 18. And then C-Mac is that next guy who could maybe benefit in terms of midfield attendances from Will Day being out. There was some training notes that came out today. I think it was GOAT Fantasy. Not 100% sure. I think it was GOAT Fantasy. Great podcast. Love to have you on the show.
Yeah, love you on the show.
C-Mac is a midfielder by trade. They've loved him at that half forward line, but there were training notes that came out today that saying he's training with the mids and he's looking really, really, really good. He's not the big body necessarily. Like he's not a big tank of a guy, but he's agile. He's really good user of the ball. He's got craft. At F19, I actually have a feeling that if in 3 weeks' time, 4 weeks' time, we're getting really consistent notes that he's training in the midfield, this could be a rank that I might actually move up ahead of, say, Jack Graham, maybe right next to or either side of Mateus Philippou.
Yep, two things. He's got to get rid of the rat's tail.
It's shocking, isn't it? He thinks he's Anakin Skywalker.
He does. He's a young one.
He thinks he's a Jedi out there.
And second, we talked about Dylan Moore maybe getting more midfield time, but I think McDonald's a bit more like for Day, a bit more similar build, kicking efficiency, disposal efficiency. I worry about his fitness capabilities suddenly being a full-time mid, but I'm probably a bit more excited about Connor McDonald filling the void than a Dylan Moore. So certainly a watch over the next month.
Yeah, I agree. And I've always liked C-Mac. I was really high on him last year. Didn't pan out, but the numbers from 2024 suggested a breakout was on the cards. Just didn't happen. So it could come this year. Justin McInerney could be interesting. He averaged 78 last year. He had some spike games. He could be good. He's probably not a guy that I'm looking at taking, although he could be really good for a zero or a hero forward strategy. If you've got your M1 to 3, if you've got your ruck and you've got your 2 defenders kind of tucked away, man, coming out with Justin McInerney from a zero forward perspective as your F1 and you manage to nab him in like round 8, I think you're pretty happy with that. And Florence gone. So does that open the field up for him as well?
I think it does. I actually like McInerney as a football player, and he's someone who's always been hampered by injury. But in that back 6, I think McInerney, as you said, with Florent opening up, we don't know what they're going to do with Bice. We don't know what they're going to do with a lot of those like-for-like players who are good distributors. Maybe defensively, there's some question marks, but I think McInerney actually puts defensive pressure on small forwards. So with no Florent, there's certainly upside, I think, for McInerney this season.
the last one to round out this tier, we're still on tier 3. There's so many interesting names to talk about in this tier of safe floor. And this one is very interesting. At F21, we've got Harry Mackay of the Carlton Football Club. He came out of last year averaging 78, but I don't think that paints the complete picture of why he's being ranked as a top 24 forward. So hear me out here.
Bring out the Penske file. Let's hear it.
Penske file, baby. We're opening it up. He averaged 78 on the year, but he averaged 95 on games without Charlie Curnow. So in the back end of the year, in his 4 games without Charlie Curnow, he had a floor of 74 and a ceiling of 122. And those 4 total games were 90, 74, 122, 97. Now, I am happy with that. If I can get Harry Mackay as an F2 or F3, if I can pick him up as an F2 or F3, and I've really gone hard on my other positions, I am happy with a floor of 74. Now, I'm not saying that is necessarily, it's not like he won't drop a dud. He will drop a dud every now and again. He's a key forward. That's the nature of the game. But he has proven, I think, that when he's not competing for touches, when he's not competing for targets and goals with Charlie Curnow, he has proven that he can score some bags, man. So when he scored 122, that was off of 7 goals. But you know what? When he scored 97 points in round 24, guess how many goals he scored?
Hit me.
1. So he nearly turned up without a goal. This is a guy who can rack up the points in other ways when he has to get involved. He obviously does some hit outs and he attends the ruck every now and again as well. Have I convinced you that Harry Mackay is a top 24 forward in 2026?
Oh, look, you've sold me on that one. And traditionally, key positional forwards, we know the volatility with scores, especially with those low floors, whether they drop a 40, 50, 60. No Curnow. They've added Haywood, but he's a bit more workmanlike. I don't think he's going to be a target. So he's going to see a lot of footy, a lot of contested one-on-one opportunities. So I like it, mate. You really sold me on Harry Mackay there, especially if he goes late. I like that.
That's all right. Tier 4. So we've only got
There's
a
some
couple
good
of
names in Tier 4.
There are some good names. There are some good names, mate. Tier 4 is called Upside, baby.
Upside, baby.
These are those players, and there's a couple of different positions that have this tier of upside. These are those players. This is the sweet spot for me. Right?
Yeah.
And look, there's actually a name in here that I think probably belongs in the tier above, and we'll talk about him. He's one of your boys, or he is your boy. You've got him highlighted. We'll get there in a moment.
I've got to do it.
This is the sweet spot for me. If you are me and you're either taking Harry Sheezel, Isaac Heaney, maybe a Christian Petrarca in the first couple rounds, or if you miss those guys, you're not touching forwards until the mid to late rounds, this is where you are going to live. So these are the names where if you can come away with a really solid midfield and defender depth, a really good ruck, and then you can load up on these guys, I think you have done exceptionally well. So coming in at forward number 22, we've got Brent Daniels, your boy. Yes, and I think a lot of people would tell me that this ranking is way too low, but we have talked about the old BD. At F23, we've got Jack Ross. F24, Sam Lawler. Yep. F25, Ben Keys. F26, your boy, JDG, Jordan De Goey. Yep. F27, Riley Sanders. 28, Darcy Wilson. 29, Lockie Schultz. At F30, we've got Devin Robertson. 31, Paul Curtis. 32, Jack Ginnivan. And at F33, we've got Sid Draper. That's actually an interesting conversation given some recent news. We won't spend any time on Brent Daniels. We've already talked about Brent Daniels in depth. We've talked about his pros, his cons. If you want to hear that conversation, listen to our classic episode where we go over the forward line in classic. Some awesome discussion about him there. Jack Ross is a really interesting name. He showed some great promise. Average 73 last year. I didn't see anything in his stats that screamed breakout potential to me, but I could be wrong. He's a very good footballer, and we're skint in the forward line. Sam Lawler, though.
Yes.
Sam Lawler at F24. I actually had him lower. I had him lower than this, and I switched him up right before we recorded. He came out of last year averaging 54 points. We've heard some outstanding training notes from him. Again, I think it was from Goat Fantasy today. It was talking about Richmond. Sam Lawler is looking exceptional in the midfield. He's getting more midfield minutes than he was last year, and he's looking like an absolute pro. He obviously suffered some injury setbacks last year. Do you feel like this is like, yes, he belongs in the upside tier, but do you think like from a pure rankings perspective, this might actually be wrong? Like, is he too low?
I don't think he's too low, only because he's so young and he missed so much football to the back half of the year. So I think for someone who's going to be in a midfield, although, yep, great, he's looking perfect in preseason, there's experience required to be successful in a midfield in the AFL system. So
absolutely,
two concerns are obviously being so young, but second of all is how low total points, AFL fantasy points at Richmond, their average for last season. So they're capped. And for those reasons, I think you've got them where they are. Jack Ross, again, is a really impressive footballer. I thought he was going to come along a lot earlier than last year. It's taken him a while, and that surprises me. But I think it's more...
You were hot on him last year, weren't you? I
was. Really like him as a footballer to watch. But they're just so capped, Richmond, in their total fantasy points. So the distribution is going to be low. That's my concern with Sam Lawler. So young, looking great in preseason, but it's a big jump to be a full-time midfielder in AFL. And again, sustain week in, week out, heading into mid-season buys. So not sure. He's exciting.
He comes out of last year averaging 54 fantasy points. What do you think is a reasonable projection? Actually, give me two projections. Number one, give me a reasonable, realistic projection for what he can average. And then number two, give me a high upside projection, like something that's probably not likely, but not outside the realm of possibility either.
70 to 75. You got Taranto, you've got Ross. Being so young, he's going to spend time on the bench as well. We've got this extra player that he could spend more time on that bench rotation. I'd say best he could be 70, 75.
Okay, 70, 75. I reckon 75 is probably about right for a realistic projection. I am going to say I think there's a world where he scores 80 to 83. I don't think it's likely, but I think it's a possible outcome. And so that's why I feel like if I could take Sam Lawler round 10, I don't actually know where you're going to get Sam Lawler. Like, I think there are some leagues where people might be super high on him and they just take him early. And I think there are some leagues where he's going to go almost undrafted if it's a bit shallow. But I think there's if you can get Sam Lawler, like round 10, 11, I think you're doing really, really well. Ben Keys at 25, but then your boy Jordan De Goey at 26. Now, he averaged only 3 more points than Sam Lawler, 57 points. But obviously, he's a much more practiced footballer than Sam Lawler. He's got a lot of experience. We know how talented Jordan De Goey is. He did have a bit of an injury-plagued season last year, and he has got a DVP for the first 5 rounds of a D+, so not the strongest opening fixture. Do you feel like this? I feel like maybe you reckon this rank is a little too low for JDG. Tell me about him.
Well, history suggests not. I mean, in and around that 90 mark, reliant on goals, forward time. I'm just hoping, I'm projecting he has more midfield time. They're very similar. They're very similar impact players, aren't they?
Yeah.
Lawler and
they're all
De
in
Goey.
that Dustin Martin kind of cloth, aren't they?
Elk, which aren't
Zach
traditionally
Bailey as well, Cam Rayner.
Which aren't traditionally fantasy scorers for long periods of time. You might get a season with Dusty. You might get a season with the Jordan De Goey, but to back up season to season, we see these periods. I'm forecasting that this year is going to be one of those seasons that Jordan De Goey has more midfield time. Touch wood, his body's right, and I think there's plenty of upside. I think he's in your tier, upside baby. I think there's upside, 10 to 15 points.
And I think that's key with Jordan De Goey, isn't it? It's like, it's not that it's the key is like the total recipe of 2026. There is opportunity to be had for Jordan De Goey, and the really switched on coaches are going to know that. And he's one I'd be targeting. Like, imagine you do 0 forward. You end up with a few really solid midfielders, defender, let's say Lloyd Meek or something in the ruck. if your forward line can be Brent Daniels, Sam Lawler, Jordan De Goey, how do you feel about that, given the fact that you intentionally punted that position and you stocked up elsewhere on talent? I feel pretty good.
Really good. If that gets you a Caldwell, if that gets you a Rosie, if that gets you
100%.
Dunkley, absolutely. That's a cracking forward line if you've been able to stack your midfield or defensive line as well with a Sinclair. I think that's a really good play. Solid names.
Remember as well, like if you then manage to get your M3 or your M4 or something as someone like a Will Ashcroft, a Matt Rao, even a Clayton Oliver.
If you got
in there a bit later.
Mind. Jack Steele. Yeah.
You can trade one of these guys as well later in the season. If you get to a point where you're like, I need something up forward, you can trade one of these guys and get more than a single forward in return. So that's kind of where you've got to be thinking on draft night. Look, that's mostly the guys we wanted to talk about in depth. So we're not going to spend I just want to go through the rest of the rankings. I just want to list them off. And then I'm going to ask you for one name that you think is interesting and worth maybe a punt for coaches to try and aim for in those last few rounds. So tier 5 is called plotters and roster cloggers, which tells you what I think of having these guys on your list. At F34, Shea Bolton. F35, Ed Langdon. F36, Patrick Dangerfield. 37, Josh Rochelle. 38, Tim Kelly. 39, Cameron Nan, who... Oh, sorry. Actually, I haven't dropped him down. Cameron Nan should be dropped down and possibly out of the top 50. I apologize for that. Alex Neil-Bullen at 40, Mason Wood at 41, Jack Martin at 42, Brad Hill at 43, Jack Gunston at 44, and Max Hall at 45. I would probably move all of those guys up one and then Cameron Nan stick in there at 45. This is only because I really like Cameron Nan. I really liked his footage, but we haven't heard anything or any training notes from Hawthorn about him. So he's probably not, probably shouldn't be in there. And then tier 6, I've called boom or bust. These are those guys that if you have punts, probably you hope that one of these guys is on your bench, or maybe they're your final forward because you really punted the position and you just need someone who could give you something at some point. Charlie Curnow at 46, Cam Rayner at 47, Joel Frazier at 48, although maybe he could be higher. Josh Tracy at 49, and Logan Morris at 50. Is there a name in any of those guys from 34 to 50 that you're like, that's interesting?
Tim Kelly's interesting. Let's face it, three seasons ago, and this is off, I'm rubbing off your coattails here because we talked about it pre-recording, but 3 or 4 seasons ago, he was a gun in that Geelong midfield. So for Tim Kelly to be at 38... surely there's a bounce back year at some point. Is it going to be this year? I don't know. But a name of that quality, he's in his home state. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Is he a player that's had a really good preseason? He's in a really good space. His fitness space has improved. Is he going to be in that midfield, or is he going to be a player that's going to spend time on the wing? What are your thoughts on him?
Question 1. How long do you think Tim Kelly's been in the West Coast Eagles?
3 years?
No, mate.
What is it? Is it longer? Is it 5 years or something like that?
6 years he's been a West Coast Eagle.
You're joking. And
his last season with Geelong was 2019.
That's crazy. And doesn't that just make that a point that for 5 years he's just been in the wilderness? He seems to be a player that's been in the wilderness of fantasy scoring.
So, and this is the thing. He's never averaged 100 before in AFL fantasy. The best he's done is 98.9 in his final season with Geelong. And then he did 98.7 3 years ago in 2023. He's averaged about 85 in most seasons. And he had a down season. His first season with West Coast was 76, and his most recent season was 63. I see nothing out of him from last year that makes me want to... If I can get Tim Kelly as my final forward in my forward line, I'm probably okay with that, in the hope that maybe he's got 10 points of upside and he can give me 73, or I could be pleasantly surprised and he just gives me a bit of a bounce back season. But I'm not sure that Tim Kelly is the future of West Coast. And I think they want the young. He's 31.
31.
He's 31. I think they want the kids in there. And I think Jack Graham is probably the new general of that midfield. And I'm not sure I see that Tim Kelly is going to get as much time as he would need in there in order to kind of make up those points. Like his CVA is 48% last year.
Yeah.
It's not good enough. Like that's not high enough for what we would need out of him. And if he's going to give you 63, he's not helping anyone at that point. I think that's we done?
Yeah.
I think we're done.
Dinner.
That's it. Let's have some dinner, everyone. We are out of here. We have a YouTube channel. We told you at the beginning. We're reminding you again. Please like, subscribe, share our stuff. Go to YouTube, chuck it on Twitter, whatever. But it would be awesome if you could follow us there. We're going to start uploading videos. If you enjoy the content, as always, please give us a follow at the Contest Fantasy Footy Show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating everywhere you can. It really helps us grow. You can follow me on Twitter at Contest Fantasy, and you can follow K-Man on Twitter at K-Man_TC Fantasy. Our next episode is something classic related. We haven't talked about it yet, but I'm sure it will be a banger. Thanks, everyone. See you later. We forgot to play the music. I'll have to put it in later.
I had one job. One job, K-Man.
One job. We're still getting used to doing this stuff live. Are you playing it, or am I putting it in later? We'll put it in later.
Here we go.
There it is. All right. Playing us out. Thanks, Jimmy Jams. We appreciate it.
Jimmy Jams. Love you, bro.
Love to have you on the show.